Hey, I think we're live. My name is Jamie J. Stay tuned. We're going to be joined shortly by Mr. Devin Craig, and we're just going to be talking all about the wonderful world of culture. You know how I love it. We'll be right back in 38 seconds. Hello there, it's Jamie J. I'm the CEO and founder of Bottleneck Distant Assistance, but that's not why we are here today. We are here today to talk to Mr. Devin Craig, and we're going to be talking about building better cultures. And what better timing with the new year right around the corner? What a better timing. Devin is principal of Craig Consulting Group. And why can Devin help you stop the bottleneck in your business? Well, let me share with you his bio. Devin is on a mission to help organizations and the people within them flourish, specifically by building awesome workplace cultures through honing clarity, building super people managers, and highly cohesive teams. He is the author of the book called Super Manager: How to Unlock People and Organizational Performance and Potential Through Great People Leadership. He has a master's degree in organizational leadership from Gonzaga, and his bachelor's is in political science from UW. He's been a people manager at various levels in a wide variety of size and type organizations, ranging from Fortune 500s to a small independently owned franchise and even the military. His approach to teaching, training, coaching, consulting, and leading can best be described as simple, fun, and effective. He has helped thousands of people become better managers, succeed as new and experienced managers, build more high-performing teams and awesome work cultures, and enjoy their work more and advance in their lives and careers. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. Without any further ado, please welcome Mr. Devin Craig. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's up, Jamie? Good. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm excited. I really get pumped up. I am a nerd when it comes to culture, systems, processes. I just geek out on that stuff. So I'm really excited to learn from you today and for you to share your words of wisdom with all the experience that you have. And thank you, by the way, for your service. If you were in the military?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was in the Army. Thank you.
Oh, what was your MOS?
I was a 15 Alpha. So I was in aviation.
Oh, wow.
So I did like refueling and logistics and stuff like that for helicopters. So yeah, it was
holy cow. Yeah, that's cool. I myself was 11 Bravo, and I wish I would have gone into aviation.
Right?
Been a lot better.
Being on the ground all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I wonder for the people that are watching or listening, either now or in the future, if you could tell us a little bit more about you, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, so like the bio said, that was a mouthful. Sorry for all that. I should have made it less. But yeah, I think like a lot of people learned about culture the hard way. And I always like to tell this fun story. It's not a fun story. It wasn't fun at the moment, but it's a good learning now for me. Is one of my first experiences in management. I had to do what a lot of people like dread doing, right? So I was sitting in this quiet little conference room, and it was a blank, boring conference room, sitting there just kind of having a conversation with someone, and it was very tense in the room. Okay. And the reason it was tense is because it had been months of conversations leading up to this point. And so I finally get the words out I need to say, and I say, "I'm sorry, but I got to let you go." And this person, they slammed on the table. They pointed their finger in my face and started yelling and screaming. I don't even remember what they said. I was so freaked out. And after what felt like minutes was probably only seconds, they stood up, stormed out. The chair behind them flew and smacked the wall, and they stormed out of the room. And letting everybody else in the world know of peers and clients and customers and everybody else as they kind of charged out of the building. And just sat there in dismay. And I'm like, man, that's how dare they react this way? At first. But then after I reflected on it more, after a while, I realized, well, actually, it was really me who was not helping them kind of understand where they stood, and we're kind of like guiding them through this journey and being a good leader for them. I was a bad boss in that moment. That started me on this journey of like wanting to learn more about leadership and management. And what I also learned, the more I learned, the more I realized that there was a lot at play in that situation. So, I mean, I realized that the company I was a part of actually taught and trained us and specifically instilled in us the specific way of approaching people, like how we wrote up things, how we talked about these kinds of things. And it was, even though I didn't feel good about it in the moment, and that reaction I got, I didn't feel great about, I realized what it was is I was being conditioned to specifically approach that situation that way. And so what I realized, it was kind of the culture of the organization was specifically instilling this. And I'd even experienced that other times in this organization, lots of other organizations. So I think probably like many people who, I don't know about you, Jamie, but plenty of people who are passionate now about culture, it's because they learned the hard way. I've also experienced at the other end too, right? I mean, leaders I didn't love working for, and places where I didn't feel like everyone had each other's backs, and just that not fun part of it. And also the other part, right? The other side too, where I did feel and experience really positive, environment that really made me want to do a great job. And so when I studied the dynamics of that, I realized there is an art and science to that actually can be honed, even though it wasn't really talked about most of those organizations I spent time in. So now I get to do that. I try to keep it real simple, because culture can become this really big thing. It can get really complicated. You can make it complicated unnecessarily, but it really can be focused. It really can be honed and narrowed. But yeah, so at least that was my kind of initial experience, what led me off on this journey. So now I go out there and I try to help people in either one or all aspects of culture, and try to help them try to make it more intentional. I always say intentionally awesome culture is where we're trying to get to. So I don't know. Have you experienced something like that? Is that why you're passionate about culture?
You know what? I was let go from a job. So this is kind of funny. This is a good question. So right now I run a company where it's like a virtual kind of remote-based staffing agency. That's what I do.
Yeah.
The one time I got fired was at a staffing agency. They fired me because they said I wasn't a fit. And I was let go kind of the same way. And I had right in the middle of our big office. It was a big company, but that was the manager's office. But it had all glass walls, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got called in, and you could see it. And boy, I had to do that walk of shame and walk out of there. And I was just like, man, what just happened? So I kind of had the same thing. I was on the receiving end of that. But I guess I wasn't a fit with them. Yeah. And thank the Lord I got fired. That was probably a blessing in disguise for me. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of culture. Speaking of culture, what is your definition of culture? I've heard several different definitions, but how do you define culture?
Yeah, the way I define it is the relationship that someone has with their organization. And things like, for example, employee engagement are things that are just the result of that relationship, right? It's kind of like any relationship. If you think about relationship with a spouse or something like that, right? If you aren't feeling that great about that back and forth and the dynamic between the two of you, you're not that engaged in the relationship, right? And there's lots of little things that go into the relationship, right? Small little conversations and little nuances, and being clear about what that relationship's all about, and what each people's roles are. And there's a lot of similarities and overlaps there. And that's why I came up with that definition, is because it really is about that relationship with each individual person within your organization, the relationship they have with that organization as a whole. And there's specific things that dictate that relationship, right? So first thing, so it sounds like the story you shared, that they were clear in the sense that what wasn't a fit or was or not a fit, but was it clear to you why that was the case?
No,
exactly.
I had no idea. Totally surprised when I walked in.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that most organizations aren't, and they say fit, and that really means all kinds of things. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't like you that much or something, yeah. Like your beard or whatever, like, come on, guys. So that's typically where I start with any organization or any leader, is we got to start by being exceedingly clear about what is it we actually believe here, right? What are we trying to accomplish? Where are we trying to go? What's the ultimate mission, the why? Love Simon Sinek's stuff, and I talk about the why all the time. They have to be exceedingly clear on that stuff. And when we're not, that's typically when we have painful experiences like you and I've experienced before, and probably many, many other people, because we think we're doing one thing, or we think we're in the right spot or whatever. That would have saved everyone a lot of pain. You know what I mean? If they would have just been clear with you, been clear with me, whatever. I had to do it for my own before I could find my own rhythm, find my own place to do this culture stuff. But yeah, they've got to start with that clarity piece, because
that's huge.
Yeah, when you don't,
I've never thought about it that way before. But if I look back on it, obviously, you're not going to get it right 100% of the time. You know, if you're really good, maybe 75% of the time, you're going to get it right, because you just don't know. And then making hiring decisions and stuff like that in the beginning, this could work.
Yeah.
But then, so we have everybody in on our team writes their own job role and responsibilities, and they have the authority to make their own decisions without any oversight or guidance. And I think that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
And what I found is, while going back to not everybody works out, the few times that I have had to dismiss someone, it wasn't a shock to them. They weren't upset. I actually had people apologize to me for a certain lack of performance in a certain area or something like that. I don't know that I've really had someone super mad and upset at me for doing that, because they wrote down their expectations. I agreed with them, and we moved forward based on, certain achievements or goals that would, secure their position. And I think I've never thought about that before. That's really interesting observation on your part.
Yeah.
So it really means a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. That is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about clarity. Right. And the beautiful thing about clarity and how you describe it is, like, if you involve people in the process, there's a sense of ownership there and responsibility there. And I think that's a beautiful way you've described, like, helping develop clarity together. That's the ideal, right? I mean, when I'm talking about an executive team needs to set the clarity for the organization, but as much as you could involve everyone in that process, and should, because maybe you haven't done in the past, or maybe needs to evolve or something like that. Like, that's where the real magic happens, right? It shouldn't be this just one directional thing when we're talking about clarity. But yeah, what you described is a perfect example of how to do it right? Let's be super, super clear about why you're here and what you're supposed to do and how this is going to work and what winning looks like. And most managers, leaders, and organizations don't do that, rarely do that, unfortunately. And that's the reason why I forgot that part of the story, basically, that once I got to that point of understanding and learning, I had similar experiences as you have, where I was getting hugs and handshakes as I.
Oops, you muted there.
Sorry about that. Where they came to that realization and they were apologizing, basically exact same thing. And it all came through clarity. Like, hey, what's your role? What's my role? Like, how are you doing on your goals? It's just, then my job just became questions and coaching,
Yep.
And versus, like, you're not doing what you should be doing. How dare you? Which is like what we think managers should be, some kind of control mechanism. They don't have to be, right? And it's first, you have to start with that clarity piece. And that's why I say managers are the next most important component of that, because managers facilitate that process, or leaders do. Leaders facilitate the process of clarity, and then they just help reinforce the clarity, right? And they just say, like, are we going where we need to be going? Are we doing what we should be doing? How can I help you? What's working? What's not working, right? I mean, just through questions and clarification and facilitation. That's all really managers and leaders would need to be in most organizations, is just facilitators. Right. Yep. Not necessarily controllers or control mechanisms or whatever, but I'd like to point that out.
Yeah, that's huge. Going back to earlier, where the gentleman, I think it was a gentleman, I don't know, he or she kicked the chair out and was all upset. Do you think, and before I ask that question, we just got a comment. Let me see. David R. Miller says, great stuff, Jamie and Devin. Thanks there, David. Do you think transitioning from the military to this role, was that fairly close in time? And let me share a little context for this. I remember in the 82nd Airborne, we were instructed not to ask any questions to the general when he came around and did inspections. Do not ask anything. Only answer questions that he asks, and keep it simple. Yes, sir. No, sir. No elaboration. And we're like, okay. And he'd come in there, and there was things I wanted to say so bad, but you knew that wasn't going to go over well. So you're like, yes, sir. No, sir. And then when I was in radio, they slapped down. They were going to have the general area manager, whatever, the bigwig, come in and check on our station. And they handed us a mission on a little piece of paper. They go, memorize this before he gets there. Don't ask any questions, only answers. And I'm like, this is eerily familiar.
So familiar. Yeah.
The reason I ask you that was when you were leading at that time and the person got upset, did you carry some of that, what you learned from the military?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I was still carrying it with me for sure. And the funny thing is that organization, I think, had a lot of influence from that type of thinking and even military thinking. Because that's exactly where I was at, is I was just doing what I'd been conditioned up to that point to do. And I was kind of falling into these roles and positions in companies and organizations initially in my management leadership career that like just reinforced that. They didn't break that mold in me intentionally. Right. And so absolutely, that's exactly what was happening there. I didn't focus on the relational piece. I was fulfilling my role, but I felt so out of my own skin by doing that. It was just so disingenuous with how I wanted to be, but I was just doing exactly what I thought was the right thing, because what I've been conditioned to do. But you're exactly right. Exact same kind of a philosophy and culture there within that organization I was in. And I think a lot of others still do that. I think we're going through like an evolution, I believe, brand new organizations, brand new ventures, brand new industries are like trying to shirk that mold a little bit more and more, especially as people. Part of the reason why I say culture is so important and relevant today is because people are getting increasing options when it comes to work. I mean, think of this whole remote work thing. Like now you aren't stuck to a geography. And if you have a certain set of skills, like you can come and go as you please. You know what I mean? Yeah. So companies are on the hook and they don't have a choice now. It used to be like, everyone's got to show up and do what I tell them because they don't have many options. Well, that's going away. And so if you truly want, this is kind of coming on the cusp of the war for talent they've been talking about now for decades. And Gallup's been reporting all their stuff about culture and like most people hate their jobs and don't love their managers and all this kind of stuff. So I think organizations are waking up to this and moving away from that mentality, but that's been the way it's been for a long time, right? Long time.
Years and years and years.
Industrial revolution style stuff, you know what I mean? Like when they put people in the cogs and the wheels along the factory line and they just do your part and don't question kind of thing. That's been around, couple hundred years now, so it's just we're finally starting to get to this point where the organizational structures and tempo and thinking is finally starting to catch up with the way we actually live and do business now, because people are already so empowered. I always talk about this when I'm doing a speech or a talk, like when I talk about how we make decisions today about where we're going to go eat, right? What do people do? First thing they do.
When they say they want to go eat?
Go to a new restaurant or something like that. Yeah. What's the first thing you do?
Think about what's good, what good customer service maybe.
Right. And where do you find that information if you wanted to find it?
Oh, you Google it.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. We go to Google reviews nowadays, right? Yeah. I mean, customers are so empowered nowadays with all this information at their fingertips. And so, it kind of led off with first companies and organizations having to be more receptive and responsible for their actions and actually have to talk to people and be, helpful to people. Otherwise they're going to get reviews and the stars on your shirt made me think of it. I know that's not what that's made me think of it. But now, employees are kind of getting that same level of empowerment now, right? Now you've got all these other websites that do something similar as Google, where you can go and look on, I don't think it's not Monster, but like Indeed and some of these other websites where you can see ratings of companies and what's like working there. Or LinkedIn helps you like access people inside those companies. So you can, reach out to someone and say, hey, how do you like working there? That kind of thing. So companies don't have a choice, but to start to shift their thinking about these, because honestly, nobody loves to be controlled. Even people in the military didn't love to be controlled. That was just the system they went into. Right. Yeah. And, still proud of the service and still, of everything that was accomplished, but no one actually loves that type of environment, God gave us the free will. And so we want to use it. You know what I mean? Like
exactly
anything in organizations, like we don't want that necessarily. And there still can be structure, just like exactly what you described, but the structure can and should be co-created. And then it should be something that is just exceedingly clear, even if it's not possible to have it thoroughly co-created, because I don't know exactly why. Honestly, the bigger the companies, the more structure it is. And they think they need to do that to protect themselves legally, even though that's kind of an overkill thing. But really, the reason that they need to do that is because they know that, you know, the leaders aren't equipped at all levels to make things exceedingly clear and to take care of people the right way, right? If they just did it based on some simple core values and they reference those regularly, that's not going to get them into trouble, right? I mean, but most of those protectionistic like practices came in line because they had people and managers and things like that doing bad by people. You know what I mean? Like all the sexual harassment trainings and all that kind of stuff. And like, so they're trying to avoid the legal ramifications of those things. But what I always found is like, if you have values in your company that you're actually living up to, then typically those values will cover behavior like that. So if you have kindness and respect, which are my family's values and my business's values in your core values, then you're not going to want to go do something that's harmful to someone else, right? That would be against your values. So that's typically what I've encouraged companies to do, is like make sure your values are all encompassing, you know, and broad enough where you don't need to have, you know, if you missed one line in your employee handbook of, hey, don't do this, you're not going to be in trouble because you haven't helped people internalize. The other funny thing about what you just said there was, I love how we think that the way to get people to understand the mission statement is just grill it into their brain, right? And that's not necessarily the way to go about it, right? Because really what we're trying to do is get people. So once leaders have made it exceedingly clear what we value and where we're going and things like that, the very first thing we should be doing is right from the onset of welcoming in people to the organization, even during the interviews, it should be exceedingly clear. And I think most companies do a pretty good job of this, of like saying, hey, this is what our company is all about. This is what the role will be. These are where our values are. But typically what I find is that's a little bit of a sales pitch, right, to new employees. But what employees should experience is they first hear that stuff, and then they hear from the interviewers and all that kind of stuff that, hey, I heard you say that you are all about this too, right? It sounds like we're similar in our values. It sounds like we're on the same mission. Like, why don't you come join us on our mission? So first of all, it should be this natural thing. And then what the organization, the leader should do is just make that explicit. Say, hey, we brought you in here because we could tell you're passionate about the same thing we are. We brought you in here because we could tell you value the same things we do. And just reiterate that, you know, because sometimes people don't even know for themselves what they truly value. You know, they haven't gone through that exercise and practice of doing that. And so organizations can actually help unlock that from people in just listening for their answers. And they need to be skilled at kind of picking that stuff up from people. And then once they bring them in, then the orientation piece of it shouldn't necessarily be the memorize this is this we're supposed to do. It should be this like, we're all in this together. It should be this more inspirational thing, and just a pounding of the beating of the same drum over and over and over again. And the mission, by the way, should also be pretty simple so that it is like repeatable and understandable, and everyone kind of knows and grasps it and gets behind it naturally because it's easy to remember. But that whole memorization piece, all you're doing really in that situation, just kind of creating robots.
Oh my gosh. And then it's gone after this.
Yeah,
it's not needed.
Exactly. After the generals left.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what you say is it's a belief system.
Exactly right.
So, and it usually starts at the top, because that person, whoever that was that started that company or is running that company, it's their personal beliefs that are intertwined with that vision and or that mission or the core values.
Yeah.
And in order for, in my opinion, I'd love to hear what you say about this, but in my opinion, if I or you as a leader in an organization, or anybody else for that matter, wants to work with people, I want to work with people that share a similar belief system that I do, because that's the culture that I feel most passionate about. And if I can find others that join in with that, and you're right on the mission statement, I don't know anybody on my team that actually has it memorized. But every Wednesday during our meeting, our vision and our mission are read by, and a different person on our internal team leads the meeting every Wednesday. And they do a small training afterwards to let everybody else know what they do in their role, right? A little 5-minute training. But I think it's really important that we keep reviewing that vision. We keep reviewing that mission. And this is our 4th iteration of our vision and our mission, by the way, since we've started, because as we grow and learn more, I think we develop, and maybe needs change or something like that. And I want that to be perfectly clear that that's okay to do, in my opinion. I would love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's a ton to unpack there, but like, yeah, I think it's fantastic what you just described of like, we got to revisit this over and over and over again, because the attention here is to internalize so that it affects our behaviors. And we should do both, right? As leaders, we should guide people's behaviors to be in line with our culture. So there's kind of, I've read different things, and there's different opinions about, do you have people behave a certain way until they internalize what you believe, or vice versa, chicken or egg kind of thing. But you got to do both, right? I mean, guide behaviors and then reinforce it back to, this is why I'm asking you to do this, because this is what we believe. And this is how this ladders up to make the organization successful. And yeah, absolutely. I think organizations do have to evolve over time. Wasn't it Microsoft who recently, their original mission was to get a PC in every home? Well, that's already happened. So now their mission's changed. This is a massive organization. Their mission just changed with a new leader who realized, like, hey, yeah, check the box. We did that. So what's the next mission? And I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but it's something more about getting people connected. And that's why they have all these, their products are now all related to collaboration, right? And Microsoft Teams and all this stuff is the stuff they're really pushing hard, is because now they've realized, like, we've got to move the yardstick now. We've got a new path to go, because we kind of already accomplished the last one. And so
here's that Microsoft mission. It's a technology company whose mission is to empower every person in every organization on the planet to achieve more. We strive to create local opportunity, growth, and impact in every country around the world.
Yeah. And again, they're a huge one. They've been around for a long time, one of the most successful companies in the world, and they had to change it. So every organization can and should, no matter how big or small you are, it should be evolving all the time, because you're guiding light. And so if something dramatically changes those circumstances, that place you're going to needs to, go 10 degrees to the right a little bit, then so be it. That's fine. We should be constantly changing and evolving. And that means we're living culture right, because that means we're actually using it to help guide our decisions and our thinking. But when we're not using that stuff to help guide our decisions and our thinking, then it's just a plaque on the wall. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also want to, there's one important key takeaway from this too, is just because they share a similar belief system doesn't mean that it's not okay for them to disagree, or for them to challenge leadership in a certain way if they believe strongly in a case, or if they have an idea. The last thing I would want to do is have somebody not share an idea that they have because they feel like maybe they're not worthy, or it's not a good idea, or anything like that. I think it's really important to empower them to be able to, number one, disagree very, very professionally, amicably, make an argument to maybe go in another direction. I'm all about that. So while we share the similar belief system, we all believe, okay, vision, what we aspire to do, mission, our daily objectives. This is how we achieve that vision. As long as it's healthy and in that way, I am all about. I got corrected this morning by my assistant, and I was like, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. And so I don't want to say sharing in a belief system that everything I believe goes.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And have you, as you're talking, this makes me think of the whole concept of servant leadership. Have you heard of that concept before? Yeah. And most people think when they hear that term, they think what that means is the leader to be servantile or something like that. But that's actually not what it means at all. I actually had a chance to listen to one of the founders of this concept talk about it. And what he was basically saying was exactly what you just described, Jamie, which is like, a leader, you are serving that higher mission and calling that organization is trying to strive towards. And the leader doesn't allow themselves or anyone else around them to not constantly be striving towards that mission. So you're really serving the mission. So when you serve the mission, then you can do what you just described. It's like you're encouraging and empowering people to challenge when we are not doing something that's moving us closer to that mission. Right?
Yes.
So yeah, then everyone is expected to, at that point, to push and challenge, and roles in the organization matter less in terms of mission versus us valuing the role over mission. We value the role over mission, then we're not actually serving the mission or the organization. We're serving the role.
Yep.
Whoever's in it at that time. You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
But most leaders at those high levels, they don't necessarily want that. That's just how the system and the structure has been built. Some do, some do want to be served. And they want it their way to the highway, but typically organizations are pretty limited in what they end up accomplishing, or those are the ones that tend to fail or that have culture implosions, like the Wells Fargo thing or whatever, all these other organizations who've had these issues. It's typically been because we're doing role serving versus mission serving.
Oh, yeah. I worked in corporate America for 12 years, took me 11 years to figure out how to get out. And one of the things in one of the middle, I did this job for about 6 years, I think. But boy, I was so scared that there was no trust, with the other. We were a bunch of salespeople for a large company, and man, it was like somebody wanted to get these deals and just perform, and there was no like support, there was no help, that you had to figure stuff out on your own. And I was like, that is just not a fun environment to be around. And why, people made good money there, but I mean, I found myself complaining every time I went home. I was just complaining at the time and like, this is terrible and this stinks. And, I did this and that, and that's no way to do it. You gotta kind of love it. And you said, what is expected of them. I think it's even more that the staff or the team members, I shouldn't say staff, the team members want to do better.
Yeah. That's what I thought would be fine. I mean, people in the organization, no one loves to be in those kind of environments. And if you have a mission alignment where they want to be there because they want to help the organization be successful, then they want to help figure it out, and they've got their ideas and their input. But it's just all about what that organization values and how they actually want to get there, or do they want to get there at all or not? So it sounds like that other organization you're a part of, like maybe they were just ultimately focused on achieving the result,
Oh, it was a numbers thing. That was it.
Yeah. So it's either serving a role or serving the dollar. I mean, that's typically like what the trap that most organizations fall into, is one of those two things. But that's why I think it was just last year, that a bunch of the CEOs, I don't know if you heard about this, but they call it the Ceo Roundtable. A bunch of the CEOs of some of the biggest organizations got together just last year and said, you know what, like we think it's time for us to start talking about, there's all these things like this that are kind of evolving how we think about business. But they basically said that we need to start looking at and focusing on all of the stakeholders our businesses affect and not just the shareholders. For decades now, the shareholder reigns supreme. And so that's part of the reason why people have had experiences like you and I have had, is because that's what it was ultimately about. And that's what, some academic fingers and things like that got really rooted in business leaders' minds decades ago. And that's why we started seeing the mass layoff thing and all this other kind of stuff start to happen, because, no longer was it about like the people who are in our organization being affected, or communities being affected, or that's where all these documentaries on Netflix about, businesses doing bad things to the environment and all this kind of stuff, because the thinking was it's just all about just the organization, just making sure we maximize that profitability. But it was so awesome to hear them all say like, no, we got to make sure we're also taking care of our people and also taking care of our communities and our environments. And a lot of organizations have put lip service to this, but with these organizations putting a stake in the ground saying, these are some of the biggest in the world, saying, no, we're going to serve a mission that positively affects all these people. So that was one of the biggest pieces of news I've heard in a long time, for organizations really taking seriously, like it needs to be about this collective mission and not just lip service to the mission so that we can ultimately accomplish the profitability piece. Sure, you got to have the profitability, but I love how Simon Sinek talks about it. He said, money's just the fuel. It's not the mission, So yeah, sure. You got to have the money to achieve the mission. Absolutely. So don't, circumvent that, but don't only focus on that. It's like buying a car to buy gas. It's silly. So you got to focus on what's that destination you're trying to go to. What are you trying to accomplish with that new vehicle, or where you're going, or whatever type thing,
Man, you have a lot of nuggets, man.
Yeah. I got it from other people, but I love that on, that's for sure.
Well, that's fantastic. We're coming to the end, and I want to respect your time here, coming to the top of the half hour there. But I want to know, how do people reach out to you to learn more about what you can do? And where are they in their business when they need to seek out Devin Craig?
Well, I try to only evangelize the quasi-believers. So people who know and get this, know that they want to focus on it, but maybe they don't know quite how to go about it, or they just want some ideas or tips or guidance or support or coaching or whatever have you. And maybe they know they have one piece that's missing, right? Because I talk about leaders, teams, and clarity. And so maybe they feel like they've got that clarity and they're doing cool things like you're doing, but maybe they know they've got, layers of managers that they got to try to get on board and get more skilled at bringing that culture to life in the rest of the organization. So I can help them with just that piece and do a, super manager academy, I call it. So any one of those three things, if they know they've got the problem to solve, they know culture is that key to helping them to that next level of the organization's, success, then that's a perfect time to reach out to someone like me. And they can reach out through my website that I know you'll share, through LinkedIn. I'm always on there, Facebook. So at Craig Consulting Group, ccg.com, or LinkedIn, Devin Craig CCG, or on Facebook at Devin W. Craig. So any one of those three ways are easy way to reach out to me. Even just a conversation about culture, I love talking about it. Maybe it's maybe you literally just need to bounce something off someone and have a conversation like Jamie and I did. Or if you want legitimate help doing it, then reach out, because it's not, I try to make it simple, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So it is important to get guide.
A lot of stuff to unpack.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we leave, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap?
Just thanks so much for having me on. I love talking culture. I love that you're a geek like me for culture. So yeah, hopefully everyone else out there who's culture geeks like us got something out of this conversation. So I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, you're amazing. Devin, can you hang out just for like 30 seconds while I wrap up?
Yeah, no problem.
All right. 1 second. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. All right. We've been talking to Devin Craig today, and I got to tell you, he is amazing. I'm a huge fan already of Devin Craig. If you want to learn more, Devin Craig is the principal of Craig Consulting Group. You can go learn more by going to craigconsultinggroupccg.com. Check him out on LinkedIn, follow him on Facebook, and reach out to him, especially if you're kind of in a space where you think you're going pretty good and you're feeling good about your culture, but maybe you kind of want to take that next little step or that next level. Devin's the person that I would highly encourage you to have a conversation with, and just kind of go on a fact-finding mission, or just kind of check it out. Just give him a chance. And David Miller says, thanks, Jamie. You're welcome, David. I want to say thanks to Devin. He's the one that had all the nuggets today. So one last thing before we wrap up. I'm a big believer of the ripple effect. You start in your own backyard, take care of yourself, take care of your community. You start and grow regionally, then nationally, then internationally. That is creating your own ripple. So that's what I wanted to ask you to do today. Make sure you create your own ripple. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon. As a matter of fact, I do believe this is the last live with Bottleneck that I'll be doing until 2021. I can't believe it. So as of the day of this recording, this is December 23rd, I believe. Somewhere around there. I think it's 22nd maybe. And I just want to say happy holidays to everyone and hope you enjoy. So we'll see you in the new year.